understanding the benefits of being able to walk in the room, provide the energy for the business, be all excited, that doesn't work when you have 400 people in our case across 3 countries. Most of the time, whatever business you're in today, there is going to be something that you can learn that's going to help you in your next thing. Time can be a really lucky thing to grab hold of. And what I mean by that is the longer you wait to start, the harder the leap is.
Some of the pivotal moments are pretty cool to hear about as well. It ultimately led you, where you are today.
The pivotal moments, I think, number one was probably in about
Private markets investments are investors can find some real value. I find the best way to learn is learn from someone who's done it before and given it a go. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, host of Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining me here today. On these podcast sessions, we're going to talk through how certain investors have navigated the bumpy road of investing, whether it be through business or investments in general. Thanks for listening today. Welcome to another episode of Grow Your Wealth podcast, where we explore the strategies and stories of financial success. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we are joined by special guest, Frank Greeff, a former chef turned tech entrepreneur. Today, Frank will share his journey from the kitchen to the boardroom, detailing how he and his brothers founded and scaled a groundbreaking real estate technology business, Real Hub, and through a strategic merger created Realbase, which they eventually sold to domain.com.au for a staggering $180 million in 2022. Beyond business, Frank is a philanthropist with an exciting project in the pipeline. Join us as Frank discusses the blend of ambition, trust, and innovation that drove this success and how he's now applying these principles beyond the tech world. So tune in and get ready to elevate your business knowledge with Frank Greeff on Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for coming in.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
The easiest thing to start with is, welcome obviously for coming on, but you've got a fascinating journey. Before we delve into it, maybe just give us a little bit of a story on your background, who you are and what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. So my background is I'm from South Africa. So that's where my parents were born and bred. They moved me roughly when I was about 4 years old, and we did the backdoor entry into Australia via New Zealand.
Perfect.
And so what was the second part? What am I up to now?
Yeah, correct.
What am I up to now? So we sold the business about 2 years ago. At that time, I was the CEO. I stepped down about last year, July. And so my role now in the business in Domain is probably more of an ambassador role. So I spend a lot of time, I guess, over the 10, 11 years, one, there's high stress, but two, there's a lot of learnings, and so my role now is a lot about how do I help other people. So whether it be mentoring other businesses, whether it be talking on stage, it's all of the give back, and then of course with that comes a little less pressure. It's a little bit nicer to stand on stage than it is to have their customers call and yell at you.
Gotcha. And I was looking at your background. I think your two brothers were more the technical aspect, and you more had the chat and the more relationship side. How did you apply that to being a CEO? Because CEO often requires quite a bit of structure as well as the relationship side. Was that difficult or?
It's a really interesting one, right? Because when I became the CEO, so at the time of the merger, we only had a team of 40 people. Wow. And we merged with a company that was about 8 times the size of us. And so we went from 40 to 400 overnight. And because I was like the front line from a sales perspective and kind of face of the business, because like you said, I did a lot of chatting. What that meant is that the CEO that approached us to do the merger, he was about double our age. And he said, Frank, I want you to be the CEO.
Gotcha.
And I was like, yeah, cool. I guess that's what I'm doing now. Like it kind of, there was probably the right mix of naivety. And so I wouldn't say in any way, shape or form would I take took on the role of like a traditional CEO because I didn't have that skill set. I was about 27 years old. And so, my thing was I was always in sales. And so the way I thought about it was I was externally selling. Now my role is like internally selling. For sure. How do I get the best out of the 400 team members, inspire them the best they can, best they can be, and ultimately try and help drive in the right direction. But there's plenty of learnings around what it actually meant to have that, to have that title.
Gotcha. And why do you think he made that call? Twice your age. He obviously saw something, right?
Yeah, hopefully. So I think it was. to be honest, it was a succession plan. I think
Gotcha.
what my learnings was from that merger is they didn't have a succession plan in their business. We started then taking enough market share
Gotcha.
that it was like, okay, if we don't do something now, in 5 years' time, that it's going to swap and we'll be the smaller company.
Gotcha.
And so, me having, I guess, the name in the industry, he chose me because people already knew my name and knew our business that was coming up.
Gotcha. So it was just a bit of energy.
Yeah. I was a highly enthusiastic, fast talking little young pup.
Perfect. I've clearly worked, right? Now, take us through your early life. So South African.
Yep.
Okay, would you just follow sport, rugby?
I don't. I'm boring in that aspect.
That's right. It's always someone. Do you follow South Africa, New Zealand, Australia? Anyway, take us through your early life.
Yeah. So my early life is my parents have very itchy feet. Yep. They moved very often. So I think in South Africa they moved something like 23 times. My eldest brother Ken, he never was at a school longer than 2 years.
Wow.
So change was in their DNA. I couldn't tell you why, but they just love moving around. And my dad he loves a deal. He loves making a deal, but he was a nuclear scientist at one stage. He was in the army at another stage, and he always loved business. And unfortunately, the business partner he had in South Africa actually turned out to be a fraud, and he went bankrupt.
Gotcha. And
so my early life, although I don't remember it that clearly because it was super early and super young, was they essentially did whatever it took to create a life of opportunity for us. So, going from being a nuclear scientist to then in New Zealand, you filleted fish, my mum sharpened knives.
Yeah, gotcha.
And they picked apples on the weekend.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so we there was even a period of time where 5 of us lived in a caravan because that's, what they could afford.
Yep.
And so the most important element that shaped me was, I guess, seeing how hard they work, seeing the sacrifice, and then also have a deep, considering my age, a deep commercial understanding around what it means not to have money and how fast money can stretch. And so I always reflect, it's probably one of the strongest suits for me is being very comfortable with the conversation of money. So when we started the business, I was 20, but I had no big scare factor negotiating, commercial terms because throughout my entire childhood, we would talk about money around the dinner table.
Yeah, gotcha. Wow, it's a pretty solid background. Yeah. Now, it sort of goes on to the next part. Who are the top 3 people that have influenced you?
So let's park the obvious ones, which is going to be my parents and my brothers, absolutely. And let me go to the people that are external. I never had mentors when I was starting the business because I was so young. My brothers were young too. It just wasn't something that felt natural to go out there and get. So I think there's probably more what I've heard the term now that I can use is like a digital mentor. Gotcha. So who are the people that I was tracking and following and inspired by? My first one, and he's a character, so don't judge me and everybody listening for this one. But the first one who made a pivotal shift in my business was a guy called Grant Cardone. Now, Grant is just an excellent salesperson. He has got an incredible business selling salespeople courses. One that I believe is like $180 million a year recurring revenue. It's crazy. But I bought his course for like $2,500, and that's how I learned to sell. So that would be the biggest shift. The next would be a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. So Gary, very well known, and it was all just around brand and the power of personal brand, as well as he's got a high degree of like emotional intelligence, and then I am going to bring it back to my brother Ken. So my brother Ken, he I've never known anybody apart from him who is as diligent and as disciplined. So like he started training, going to the gym when he was 14, and he's like never skipped a day never skipped a week unless it was a scheduled week off. Right, like so I always laugh because he'd be really easy to assassinate because you know exactly where he is at exactly every minute of the day. But he taught me a lot in those early years around like what true discipline looks like, what day by day, and like that shaped a lot of me, is seeing that hard work and then seeing like the fitness and health element that went along with it.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So you've actively taught yourself. Obviously, you're got a personality to chat, but you actively taught yourself how to sell. It sounds like as well. So you've sort of did the study.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was like a big part of it. Like, I say I was comfortable talking commercial terms, but it's a whole different kind of ball game going in. And I guess that initial cold call, the pitch, the get in the door.
Yeah.
And so like I would practice every morning, for a couple of hours before I went to work, and it'd be like scripts and dialogues, and Grant's message was a lot around like use car salespeople and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I had to kind of figure out how to adapt that, and how to essentially, okay, here's my 5 scripts I'm going to practice today. Do it. Reflect. How do they land? Do they feel like authentic to me?
Yep.
And then repeat the process. The process. And I'd say, I get a question often these days, which is like, Frank, great, you get access to these amazing people and potential mentors, but I'm starting in day one. What can I do? Yeah. And I think that is exactly where I was. I guess I didn't hear enough about this concept of mentor that I went out searching for it. And so the reflection for me is like, there is so much content. There is so much learning to be had. Sure. And I kept that process, and I do that today. I do that today. Like literally every day, I will listen to at least an hour worth of podcasts on something that I either want to learn. It may be about business, it may be about health, fitness, whatever. It's just like a continual iteration process, but then actually do something about it. So there's the concept of, it's essentially like, what is it? It's like self-help porn. It's like you're listening, you're listening, but you're not doing anything. I think the key step is like, okay, cool. You've heard that podcast, you've heard that idea, you've heard the takeaway. What's the one piece that I can implement tomorrow? Test, measure. How was it?
Yeah.
It didn't work? Cool, no worries. Try something new.
For sure. And if you can pick up one thing.
Yes.
Sorry, I won't mention the book, right? I finished reading a book last week and didn't like the book at all, right? But there was 2 things I took from it and thought, actually, that's pretty useful. The two items.
Exactly.
What's actually interesting? Back in my early days, I've worked in the gym, selling gym memberships.
Awesome.
And the script was the number one thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd have to cold call.
Yep.
And you'd actually get thrown sort of left field things. And by having that script, it just gave you that structure.
Exactly.
Interesting if many people do that these days. Actually have that script. It's probably on a computer, right? But it used to be written down and you follow it.
Yeah.
It's an amazingly useful skill in sales, just to have something in front of you to fall back on in the conversation.
And then using that same process to go like, the script you're going to find online is not going to be perfectly suited for your business. So it's like, what is the self-reflection that you're doing post to go, okay, which parts of that worked? And then like it becoming organically and naturally better each and every time.
For sure. Yeah, I like it. Okay, now keen to hear about how you and your brothers built Real Hub from a fintech business to one you sold for 180 million. Just a little bit of the backstory, but some of the pivotal moments are pretty cool to hear about as well that ultimately led you, where you are today.
Yeah, no worries. So it was pretty loose in terms of how we started. I guess that ingrained ability to change that came from my parents just made us not scared to make the leap. So I was a chef, 20 years old. My brother at the time was a real estate photographer, and he says to me, hey, I reckon I know there's a company in Melbourne we can go do real estate signboards.
Gotcha.
And within like weeks, we had literally packed our bags, bought a ute, and from a 3-bedroom house in Melbourne, just started this business.
Gotcha.
At the time I had a budding love and early stage career of being a DJ. I had to sell my decks, and that and a 10 grand credit card is all we did to kind of start. The key there though was, because we had then no salaries and there was no financial backing, it was just like the path to profitability was just the most important piece. Yeah. From there, my third brother joined, so we kind of all joined forces together. So he was kind of doing it separately in Sydney. We combined, and now the 3 of us had started. Wow. The pivotal moments, I think, number one was probably in about, I'm going to share something here, which is that first employee. That first employee can often be a really hard, very scary leap.
Yeah, for sure.
And at the time, and it's fun to kind of laugh at now, is because we were so tight with money. It wasn't necessarily about thinking, okay, when you add someone, you can then add revenue, expand the business. Specifically, my eldest brother, it was more around like the cost. Yeah, and so and he grew up a lot closer to what it looks like to not have money. So of course he's a bit more hesitant to make those big leaps.
Yeah.
Me and my middle brother Jacques, we were kind of desperate to add that employee number one.
Yeah.
And the question was, like, well, then who's going to install the signboards?
Yeah.
Which is always fun to reflect now. But that big leap of faith and that moment was the shift that we needed then to start kind of multiplying.
Yeah.
And the reason I share that is because I think that's often one of the scariest steps.
Yeah, I understand.
Because people see the 70, 80, 90, whatever number of grand as a cost. And I now think about it on reflection, it's not necessarily about that cost to add, but what is it costing you not to add? So, for example, you're doing tasks that are solvable at $40 an hour, but as we progress in business, I was then closing deals that might be $1 million recurring.
Yeah.
How have I been focusing on a $40 an hour task? The actual cost, there's a delta between the difference between that $1 million deal and the $40. I'm actually costing the business way more by not making that leap of faith.
Yeah, I understand.
The second pivotal one that comes to my mind was the shift from like a physical services company into a technology company. Yeah. So we got to learn what it looked like from the ground up to do this kind of logistical process of installing signs, printing brochures, what it looked like to have a few trucks on the road, et cetera, et cetera. But my brother Ken said, I believe that we need to move into a tech company because, tech has better multiples, tech money is more important than service money. And, funnily enough, me and my middle brother were like, mate, you're crazy. Like, money's money, money's money. And so, like, I'm really lucky and thankful that, he pushed us and he decided as a collective, okay, he will kind of be in the corner and he will focus on building this technology platform, which is going to essentially allow us to do our jobs of these signs and brochures easier, but allow other suppliers to connect in.
Gotcha.
And that was the shift that we had, and it was about the year 4 mark, and that was truly the change of everything. When we didn't have to think about a small geographical location. We could go, okay, well now this is big enough to be in Australia and New Zealand and truly scale.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. And like, how do you go with your brother's dynamic? Is there blues, fights? Is there a boss? Or does it all work?
The best of the best fights. So we used to, when we had like a team of 10 in those early days of Real Hub, we would sit in different kind of desks. So desk allowed 3 people there, blah, blah, blah. And we had to do that because we couldn't sit next to each other. But we would some days, like when we kind of weren't mature enough in business to realize that you probably should have a stand-up screaming match. Yeah. We would have literally that. So we'd be standing up, then there's one on each row just yelling abuse at each other. Yeah. And the team members would like put their headphones on. And I've only recently found out that some of them would put their headphones on but not press play because I wanted to hear that. They just wanted to make it look like they weren't listening. Yeah. And there was many times that was really, really hard.
Yeah.
But it's I'm really lucky in the sense that they're your brothers, and so you can have that very aggressive yelling match. Yeah. But then you love each other, and you have so much trust and respect for one another, and that was like the backbone of why there was a success in the business.
I mean, it might have driven you forward quicker, right? Often 100%. It's the unsaid.
Yeah.
The fact you were close enough with your brothers, you all stood up and had a decent argument, you might have got to the end quicker.
There was zero politics. There was zero games that you spoke your mind.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, when you started this, so year 4, it sounds like things really, did you think, did you plan to scale like you did and to build a business the size you did? Because from 4 years, it actually seemed like it accelerated really quickly. Yeah. From that point.
So I share this a bit, which is like the right mix of naivety, ignorance, and in our case, a bit of delusion, if you will. And now you get to sit here and be like, oh, it wasn't delusion at all. But at the time it was. So my brother and I, Jacques and I, would be installing signboards at 6 a.m. It'd be like $1,000 worth of product on the back of our car. This week we've made, I don't know, 10 grand. And we're talking about, what it's going to look like when we're worth 50 million bucks and like, the team, the business, where it's all. And so we just thought like that, because we believed that was the case. Yeah, I got you. So did I know what the steps looked like in front of us? No. Yeah. Did we always think big? yes. You know,
Yeah,
we had, you know, we had a vision, and we were, you know, we constantly talked, like we loved business, and we constantly talked about it. And like the importance of those digital mentors was seeing people at this huge scale, you know, seeing what is possible, you know, reading Elon Musk's book, reading Steve Jobs' book, and being like, that's what's possible. And so then, you know, it helped you not have too many limiting beliefs.
Yeah, gotcha. Very good. As you scaled, do you want to give us a couple of things that worked?
Whew.
Arguing with your brothers aside from that?
Yeah. I think as we scaled, what worked? I think probably the really important piece in the early days, so let's say the early days were between team member 20 to 40, was we as the brothers were so, I guess, passionate and in love with our business, our product, the process, that it was really intoxicating for the team members around us.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so I think, you know, as a business grows and scales and you have these big corporates and, you know, you have to have values on the walls, the reality is like having that passion and enthusiasm and sharing in an open environment and just like people getting to see you literally like froth out online, like, oh, this is so good, we're gonna do this, this, and this. That was a really cool formula and mix that I think was, you know, something that I would take on to the future. So, you know, we didn't for a long time have these like conversations in silo, which is like, hey, this is where the business is going, la, da, 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 I'm excited, and then go back to your desks or have separated desks. We had that open environment, which just meant everybody kind of got to really feel it. And I think that was then you had to figure out, okay, how do you make that work when now you're in multi-countries and your people aren't there to experience it? So if I were to boil it down to like, okay, someone's listening, how do I do that? It's being, you know, not, what's the right word? It's like you need to kind of share those wins and that excitement with the team to get them to be jazzed up. Yeah. The next would be around just this concept of being open to opportunities. So again, a lot of this I get to talk about now from a place of reflection while I connect the dots. Yeah. I think one of the important through lines through our business was around, you know, I personally hated leaving an opportunity on the table. And so, you know, when that's the CEO of the business we merged with, you know, came and said, hey, let's have a coffee. You know, it's like a little thread. You don't know where it's going to go. We've been, you know, fighting at that time for quite some time. And so even though I don't know the outcome, I'm going to pull on this thread because it might go somewhere. And there's a lot of those moments in our business where it's like, I'm not sure what. Some of them are dead ends and you have plenty of wasted time. But it was always just pulling these little threads and little moments because you never know what might become something eventually, and then you get to connect the dots.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Last one around what helped us scale. I had something in my mind there.
What's interesting, your first point, right, about the three of you. I mean, that's literally leading from the front, right?
Yeah.
It's the energy of the three of you bouncing around. You've got staff around you, and just drags them along for the journey, right? Yeah. So that's a skill in itself.
Yeah. And I think that what that did is, and so this will be another overlay in terms of that help you to scale, is like your day to day through that process, you're then building this culture, which is like, hey, we're all here to perform and execute, and we love this process, which then it's a snowball effect, because then, you know, when you have that, you know, team of 30, everybody understands what we're here for, what we're here to do, and is equally as inspired by the mission. And then people kind of almost self-select when people come in. You know, we did have, you know, quite consistently in the early days, there was not often someone we fired, but it was through this process of self-selecting out, people realize I'm not built for this environment, because this environment is not the one where you know, between meetings, you drag your feet, or even we didn't even have that many meetings, or go to the water cooler for a long chat. It was like, hey, we have fun, we make laughs, we joke around. But from the minute we get here to the minute we leave, we're pumping, we're going hard. Gotcha. And I think that was, you know, that was critical.
Yeah, gotcha. Makes sense. Now, what didn't work?
What didn't work? Many things. So I think And this is like the flip side of this is it does work in time. So when we first launched the business, we took a back to front approach. So what we thought was we're going to become the technology platform for suppliers.
Yeah.
They will be our customer. So let me help contextualize. A supplier was a signboard company, a brochure company, a realestate.com, a domain, et cetera, et cetera. They will be our customers. We will help the logistics of their business.
Yep.
And then by default, they will bring all their clients on.
Gotcha.
Okay. So we did that. We had a pricing model, which was going to be $1 per property per order. And like that would have been terrible outcome in the end, but we didn't really do the math. And so we launched, I did like 15 cold calls and very quickly realized, and then we'd built our tech around this concept too. I very quickly realized there isn't a market here because those suppliers are like, they literally would say to me, this is awesome. This is going to be so great. Just letting you know, as soon as I get orders from your platform, I'll be taking them off platform because I don't want to give you $1. Like point blank would say that.
Well, at least they're honest.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for being honest. And so that, I guess you could say, didn't work.
Yep.
But then the overlay to that was we just within like, I think it was a 6-week period from understanding that didn't work to then re-going again. We had a website in the interim, which was like, we're here for the suppliers. And then we just completely flipped it and realized, okay, we need to get the customers, which is the real estate offices, and they will bring the suppliers, and the suppliers will have to work by default. Exactly a reverse.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so the important takeaway there is just understanding, like only through the looking back, the hindsight, and the connecting of dots can you realize, these important steps for success. But at the time, you might think about it as a failure. So I think it's just about compressing the time from going, this is not working, to let's try something new. You just compress that time really small, so you don't have to look back and go like that didn't work as such. What else? I think what else didn't work would be,
It all just worked.
No, it's not that. It's not that. I was just trying to think about what the valuable pieces there. I think we were of this opinion. It was a competing opinion between the brothers, which was the industry we were in was it's quite a cottage industry in terms of it's very relationship based. And so we had this viewpoint, which was if we bring out the greatest product at the best price, we will win. Yeah. Right. That was, and it seems so logical. And the reality was that this, some of these businesses were using a worse product, but had been doing for 10 years. But those people took them out to, the F1 in Melbourne and do it all the niceties. And I think realizing that just because you have the best product, a great branding, a good message, doesn't mean you're going to win. Yeah. And so what didn't work is, I was quite bad as a salesperson. I have to be myself in terms of I can't be like a fake version in terms of like me taking you to the dinner or the F1 and doing an experience wasn't that important to me, because what I thought was important was delivering you the best possible product at a great price. And then every time you had a challenge, I will help you solve for with our team. And that doesn't work. And so for the particular industry, even though we're tech, now I do a lot more of that, and maybe it's just because I'm a lot more comfortable being the age that we're in. So I think for the takeaway there for people is just understanding that you still need to, and I think it becomes more and more important around how do you build a relationship, especially when it's business to business. Business to consumer, sure, different, but business to business, when you're looking at the long tail and the lifetime value of the customer, it is going to be important to kind of have them in your corner.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now back to the episode. Key learnings. Well, it sort of overlaps a little bit. Yep. So some of the key learnings for you.
Key learnings. I think the key learnings we slightly touched on, but one of the key ones for me was around what does that look like to go from a lounge room to a reasonably sized office to a team of 400 across three countries, and that would be around the culture piece. So understanding the benefits of being able to walk in the room, provide the energy for the business, be all excited. That doesn't work when you have 400 people in our case across 3 countries. So the learning for me there was like, okay, I only have so much time as the CEO of this company, and therefore I can only spend so much time with everybody. Yeah. And so, if the people only got an hour every month, it's not going to be enough to inspire them. So for me, it was around creating, and it's not just like your I guess, your direct reports, your C-suite leadership team. It's more around, I kind of consider them like, who are my super weapons?
Yeah.
Who are the people I can spend a disproportionate amount of time and kind of coach, get them ignited with the flame.
Gotcha.
And then by design, they will go and share that out with the rest of the business.
Gotcha.
And I think that was really good. The next one would be around, and this is something we did really well. And again, I get to reflect, I'm glad we did, was I took this view through the learnings from Gary Vaynerchuk, which was, there's two ways to build a biggest building. You can either tear those around you and by default you have the biggest building, or you just build your biggest building. And the concept is in like business, which is you have 5 competitors and either someone asks you or you put on your website, this is why we're better. This is, these people do this bad. And so rather than spending time talking about your benefits, you spend time tearing other people's down. Right. Gotcha. And so the key learning for me was, had you asked me 4 years ago, you're going to be merging with your number one competitor that you're going head to head with, I could have laughed at you and we would all have a laugh and I'd move on with my life. But luckily I took this approach, which is, so anytime someone asked me, hey, tell me about your competitor, my approach would be, they're actually a really great business. And they've built something amazing and they've paved the way and created a market.
Yeah, gotcha.
Here's what my customers are saying about me, though, about our business. And so what that meant is when there came time to do a merger, I didn't have to kind of swallow my words and now go, oh, no, do you know what I mean? Like I got to be like kind of proudly say like that there wasn't a big moment of there, like, but you told us how bad they were. Yeah,
so you never know off the competitor.
Yeah, and so like, okay, let's boil that down to someone listening. Like, well, I don't have a competitor. I'm not going to do a merge, Frank. Cool. So it might be something as simple as a salesperson talking badly about another salesperson. Like you never know, that person maybe one day will get a job with you, right? Like, and that's something that can happen often. And so just having that negativity, I just think is not a good reflection of you as a character as well.
That's a good one. I like that super weapon concept, right? Like you think key person. You and your brothers are obviously driving this ship. But ultimately, you need to think about that key person. You got to hand over the reins. You got to grow the business. You can't do it all yourself. Yeah, correct. That's a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, and that's like another learning around the succession planning. Yeah. So I learned this a lot from my brother Jacques, which was his role in the business, and he used to kind of like jokingly say, is like, my role is to make myself redundant constantly. Yeah. For sure. Which is like he would kind of pave the way with a new ops process and going to the tech team, whatever it was, and his whole ethos and the way he thought about was like, how do I make sure I don't do this in a year and I pave the way so that other people can do it? And I think that's so critical for if you want to actually have a long-standing business that can grow and not be like, I want the keys to the castle.
Yeah. Often the egos get in the way, don't they? But you have to give up. You got to hand it over, and that's the only way you can grow. That's great. So when you started the business, what did you think success looked like? And how did that change through the journey? And it sounded like earlier you mentioned you're always thinking big numbers. You and your brother, 50 mil, which is a big number. Yeah. But it became realistic, obviously.
I think success was there was absolutely a huge commercial element to it. And that was because of our background. Yeah. So, some people will say things and you often don't know if it's true or not, which is like, it's not about the money. It was a lot about the money. And I'm super comfortable saying that, because that's just the reality. Yeah. And so that was one key element. And so it was always around, I guess, the scale and size of the business. Now, it wasn't about that because I was like, I can't wait to own a Ferrari and post it on Instagram and get people to love me. It was more just like, hey, the big scale is like creates impact. It means something, like it's noticed. And we get to set up like a great life for our family, right? So I think that was absolutely a critical element. But then beyond that was like, how do we create a business that can stand longer than us as individuals? How do we create something that has a test of time and something that we're truly proud of? Yeah. And so funnily enough, the reflection of that in terms of what has changed, to be honest, that's quite similar in terms of what we thought success looked like to what it did look like. Gotcha. And I draw a lot of that on like the learnings that we took from these different books. Like, so me and Jacques we'd listen to the same books, we'd read Steve Jobs' book and then have a jam session and chat about it.
Good.
And so like you get to see these learnings with these big people doing these big things, and you hear similar messages, and then you go, okay, well, that's not what it's about, And so I think it helped shape our view around what success was, because success wasn't, sell for a big number and then it crashes and burns and explodes like that. That's not as satisfying.
I like the attitude, constant learn, right? Like every day trying to learn something, which is cool. Now, sustainable success. Do you have a definition of it? How are you achieving it, and how can others?
Yeah, cool. So do I have a definition? No, I'd be lying if I said yes. Yep. How do I think about it? I just think it's like this concept of finite and infinite thinking. So like finite thinking being one day we sell our business, we make it, I will be happy.
Yep.
Right? Incorrect. Your brain wants to take you to homeostasis, and you will kind of feel quite empty, and you'll go, I thought I was going to be happy here. Yeah. The infinite thinking is like that is one of the milestones that I want to achieve, but there is going to always need to be something that I'm doing that's going to deliver purpose and fulfillment. And so for me, around sustainable success is like, I can't in my like own world burn bridges, So like if I'm creating a business and putting people down along the way, and burning relationships, and at the end of it, I got a big ticket in the bank account, great, but everybody hates me, and so they should. That's not success. And so I think it's just like it's a continual evolution. And making sure that you're enjoying the process, because it is so true. Like there is always a reflection of the business growing, and you remember those moments as being some of the most pivotal, fun moments, which is where tough things are happening, but you're having a really good time and doing it. And I guess now I get to sit on the seat of like, I've had the exit. And I can tell you right now, if that's it for the rest of my life, like I won't be fully fulfilled. Gotcha. And that's now no longer about the monetary value, but it's more around the process, the feedback from customers, like the feeling of the team camaraderie. Like there's just so much to it that's above and beyond the cash. That's super exciting.
Yeah, gotcha. Makes sense. And now, as far as if you're thinking about people considering, starting their own business, can you share some top tips for how you level up in business?
Yeah, cool. So I think the starting point, right? So I get people reach out, I want a mentor, like we chatted about. I think the starting point is do some absorbing. There's a lot of great content out there. That's your first and foremost, is like start to absorb what interests you in the space, and mix up the reading from from sales to business to stories. Like I love those kind of stories, which is really inspiring. But then realize that whatever you're doing today is an opportunity. Right. So I've seen this with people that you hire, and it's like, hey, salary is X. I'm doing 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. But there's like, I'm not getting something for me, and realize that most of the time, whatever business you're in today, there is going to be something that you can learn that's going to help you in your next thing. Yeah. So whether that be like, hey, I'm super stressed at the moment, there's too much work going on. Great. Well, that's a cool learning right now that you're learning you're going to be able to juggle that in the new environment.
True.
The next piece is time can be a really lucky thing to grab hold of. And what I mean by that is the longer you wait to start, the harder the leap is. So I had someone, I had someone reach out to me the other day, which is, hey, how did you think about this, doing your side hustle and doing your work simultaneously? And I was like, well, the luckiest thing for me was I was earning $400 a week. So my bottom floor from 400 to my business is successful, I can earn 450, was really low.
Yep.
And so I reflect that's lucky, right? Because the people might be on 150 grand salary and you're going to take a big haircut. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean you can't start, but just realizing every month, every 6 months, every year you put in front of you, it is only going to compound and it's going to get harder.
It's true. Yeah.
And the last overlay to add to that is, I was on stage with an incredible lady by the name of Bridget Loudon, and she said it so beautifully, which was, she was on the fast track to becoming a partner at a law firm, great paying job, And she's like, but I realized that that's my rock bottom. Yeah. If I start a business, I can always come back.
Yeah, for sure.
And so realizing for everybody listening is like, what you're doing today is the thing that you can go back to.
For sure.
And then the last piece, sorry, I'm passionate about this particular topic, but the last piece there I would add is just have a look at the time that you're spending in a week and realizing that by stacking certain tasks, you can. No, I'm not suggesting I know everybody's situation, and there'll be some people like, hey, I have 3 kids and I'm a single parent. Like, I don't know what that feels like, so I can't share that. But there's many people who don't have that, right? And so look at the time you spend during the week, and what are the certain things that if you stack those activities together. So let's say what did I do? It's like, hey, I go for a run as part of like I want to be fit and healthy. I might not listen to my headphones. Instead, I'll think about the business idea. Yeah. So I've had to do this with the cookbook, which is I have a full-time job. Now I'm creating a business in sense, even though it's all going to charity. So I had to figure out, okay, in my mornings, I have 2 to 3 hours. I have to stack certain activities to allow me to be able to get things done in the morning before I then go to work. Makes sense. So that's like my version today of a side hustle. Yeah. And so it's just like be really honest with yourself around how much time you spend in the day and how much of it is truly getting you to where you want to go to, or how much of it is kind of like, you're sitting and scrolling.
Very good. Clearly a very motivated bloke. Working hard. Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. Okay, now philanthropy, right? Yep. It's a core part of what you were doing now.
Yep.
Can you share more about Eat with Purpose?
Yep.
And how it came about?
Yeah, no worries. So it came about at the end of the deal. I had, again, listening to a lot of content then at the right time. The content for me was, what does it look like post-exit? Yep. Right? So that I didn't have this fantasy in my mind, which was you're going to be just so happy forever. Yeah. And I realized the same thread kept coming in and out, which was you will lose your sense of purpose. So you need to figure out and have a plan for what your new purpose is.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I knew that was going to happen. And so I was having this mental challenge with myself, which was going, I don't want to just create my new purpose as the next business, because I still want to give my time and attention to the one we're creating. Yes, we don't have monetary ties to it, but I want to do the right thing by it. Yeah. But I have that like entrepreneurial spirit that I need to have something of my own that I'm executing on. And then I was wrestling with myself in my mind, which is like, like if you just go and sit on a hammock post this, like you're wasting skills that you've created. Yep. And so I was chatting with my wife and I said, okay, I think I have to use it, but I have to use it in a way that's not for myself and not for us as a family. And I said, so I have these skills that I've created, which is like how to create commercial means. But how about we take a moment in time, which is don't do it for us. Yeah, gotcha. And so that was like the seed that was planted. And within a week or so, I decided, okay, well, I'm going to do something that fills up my creativity bucket. And I'm going to bring it back to my roots, which was be a chef. Yeah. And I was like, okay, my goal is I'm going to raise $1 million for charity. I'm going to write a cookbook for high performing people, because there's people like in my world, and 100% of the revenue goes to charity rather than the profits. So I was like, my commitment to it is, it'll end up costing me like $350,000. Gotcha. I pay for that, so the entire upside is for the charitable entity. And that was it. Like between that conversation and starting the process was maybe 3 weeks. And so I just kind of dove straight in. Now the side of it, like why the cookbook, is during the entire time of business creation as well as my time as CEO, at least 4 nights a week I would still go home and cook myself and my wife dinner. Because I'm really passionate about this concept of like eating healthy foods, putting the right fuel in your body, but then also beyond that, because you might say, yeah, but I got Uber Eats, Frank, I'm all good. Yes, but the process of coming home, and you've got your mind filled with the day's troubles, but then you have this moment in time, which is, I'm trying to teach people how to cook in 15 and 20 minutes and not have a million ingredients. The process of going in the kitchen and spending that time with your partner is a really good, I find, like almost meditative process, or a way in which I can disconnect from, picking up Slack and emails, and I can now actually share time with my wife, which I love doing, and then sitting down and eating that meal. And then the final overlay for me is like there's a bit of ego in there when it's like, this is delicious. I'm like, yeah, of course it is.
I'm still a gun chef.
Yeah, that's right. And that was it. And then the last piece there is really the process for me is I'd been seeing all these people who built, I guess, a brand, a following, an audience, and the power that it has when they launched a business. And so, like the Logan Pauls of the world, launching Prime, or, here in Australia, the Inspired Unemployed launching Better Beer, and it becomes $100 million business in a year, right? Yep. So I was like, okay, that's the new way that we play the game. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to document the process and create an audience through the kind of journey, so that by the time I launch the cookbook, my goal is I want to create that $1 million within 3 months of the launch.
Gotcha. Brilliant. Where are you at with the timing?
So we're launching in October.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable and confident, and part of the process is starting my podcast, Chew the Fat, and kind of building that, I guess, business knowledge, and it's an interesting intersection. I don't think anybody's done business and food, and especially like the high performance, because most people will say like, I don't cook, and like that is fine, but I'm trying to show people, well, you can do it if you just know the fundamentals and really simply, and it's an enjoyable process.
Sounds good. And your brothers, they involved?
Yeah, no. This is just a me thing. So I've just got myself, and I got a full-time videographer by the name of Kai Hanlon, and we kind of work on this together with just producing as much content for it as possible.
Brilliant.
So it's all like self-published and self-done. So it's a bit of a process.
Looking forward to the launch. Okay, so we half know what's next, right? So it's keeping you busy through to October. Is there anything else? What else are you stacking? Yeah, so my stacking these days is like my work with Domain, the cookbook, and then the final two would be like health and fitness is like a really big part of my life. Yep. So this year I set a goal to run 6Ks every day for a year. And then each week I do a half marathon, and each month I do a marathon. Wow. And so it's just a way to like, there's this concept that's been plaguing my mind, and it's certainly not something I've created, but the concept is like just doing hard shit. And the idea, if you've heard the quote, which is like, it's hard to go and like dig holes when you sleep in silk sheets. The idea is like, as a success is created, it's hard to then go and try and do your hard work. Yeah. And so I'm essentially trying to create the hardship and run directly at it myself. And then the last element is I love mentoring. So I do a lot of mentoring with early stage founders and startups, and trying to help them guide through the process. It's very satisfying when you're working with the right people. So I'm quite conscious of the who, but it's a cool process. Well, back to your own. I mean, ultimately you're building mental strength, right?
Yeah,
it's a key part of business.
Correct.
Is resilience. Taking on challenges head on, and I'm not going to be running around doing a marathon. Was it every 2 months?
Marathon every month.
Is that a competitive one, or you just
go
and run a 42?
Yeah, so like last month we ran 60 Ks from Watson's Bay to DY, and it's just like hit the road 5 a.m. 8 hours later you're there.
It's very good though, right? Ultimately, it's goal setting. It's, and you're hitting those targets.
Yeah, that's it. And like it just makes things that little bit easier, the harder stuff. Like that the next day. I was, did a huge day in Melbourne where it was like 17-hour day, and then I had to do my 6Ks, and I did it on a treadmill in a hotel at 11 p.m. And I was like, this is brutal. But then the following week was just that much easier knowing that I did that when I really didn't want to.
And even the next morning, right? I've just ran 11 o'clock yesterday. I did my 6K. Yeah. And you get up and sort of, it gives you a little kick along.
Yeah.
Okay, overlaps again. Yep. What legacy you're living and leaving?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a bit recently, and I'll probably refine over time. But for me, I guess like my mission, if you will, to use such a strong word in life, is like I want to create the net biggest positive impact I can in the world. And so that, that means from, down to like my family, my son, creating, I want to make a really robust human, to the friendship group I'm around and like pushing and encouraging them to be the best versions they can, to the being on stage, to the creating, an audience to inspire other people. Like, whatever shape or form that creates, I think that's something that I get a lot of fulfillment out of, is hearing someone, I was just chatting to someone on the phone, then they're like, oh, I just want to let you know, your 6K day has inspired me. I now set a target. I want to do 10 gym sessions a week. And that's like good. Knowing there's these small little things that are planted all around, and it's in a positive direction, that like selfishly lights my fire, gets me excited. But then knowing the positive repercussions it makes for other people, it's just so rewarding. Like, so I've got two friends who, I decided to just stop drinking maybe 6 months ago. And I had two friends who go like, oh, you know, we love that. We're going to do it. And so they just did 7 weeks. Then his dad was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do it. And then his dad's best friend was like, I'm going to do it. And you're like, it's that roll-on compounding effect. Yeah. That's the legacy that I want to, you know, that's the legacy I want to leave.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're a leader. If you think back, you talked about your 3 brothers creating the energy in the office. I mean, you're doing that in your sort of personal life now as well, right? Leading from the front.
Yeah, that's what
people follow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's very good. Okay, we're up to a couple of quick fire sort of questions. What was your first job? And this is early days first job.
Yeah. My first job was at Red Rooster, and I was on the tills.
Oh, that's great. What's a piece of advice for your younger self?
You got this. Keep going.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I think it's just my younger self was interesting. Like I reflect in moments where I'm like, I think back to me in the kitchen. I'm like, man, you got like a big head and got arrogant, like way too young. But the challenge I always have with this concept around, you know, giving yourself advice is like, I don't want to steer you off the course. So I want to keep it simple.
Well, self-doubt's a killer, right? I mean, just that statement, it gives you some guidance. What motivates you most as a person?
It's definitely inspiring other people. Like hearing positive change in others fires me up.
Gotcha. What are your tips for driving long-term wealth?
This is cool. I guess I can't use the long term yet because I'm only 31. But in terms of like what I believe the end outcome will be for me would be, unless you truly deeply understand the money markets, et cetera, play the long, consistent game rather than going to try and pick the things. You know, like today, very topical, Bitcoin's over 100 grand, amazing. So many people get FOMO, blah, blah, blah. I can proudly say I don't own any. And, you know, I could be way rich if I did, but also could be a different outcome. So I started just investing in the S&P 500 in an index fund with low cost after reading, you know, The Intelligent Investor by Warren Buffett's mentor. And I did that just when I was a chef and I could do $100 a week, right? Or what, you know, it was $100 a month at the time. And I think that just the compounding effect of long term is the most important
for sure.
than trying to take big risky bets.
I think it's good guidance, right? Patience is often the key to it. You know, you don't get rich quick. Well, something rare. It's rare.
It's rare. That's right.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make in as far as building wealth? Sort of overlaps with your answer there to a degree. A bit of FOMO.
Yes, but I haven't seen that heaps of times. So it's probably not that. I think there'd be 2 things. One would be more in reflection of business. So it'd be the time it takes from an idea to execution. I find people have too big a gap. So it's like, I want to build this business, and then 3 years later they're ready to launch and market. I just think it's the wrong way to think about things. Is like, what is the minimum you can do for the maximum outcome? Compress the timeline, because your version of perfection, which is what you're trying to build to, why you're only launching in 3 years, is going to change completely when you get customer feedback. The second element would just be for people who are not building a business and they just want to create wealth, would be around delaying gratification, delaying gratification around your spending habits. I'm very fortunate that, you know, as a business, as the 2 brothers, we essentially decided not to pay dividends for 9 years. That allowed us to not have to go and raise capital. So up until the day we sold, it meant we were earning less than so many of our team members for so long. But the end outcome was far better because we could compound over the long time.
Yeah, brilliant. So when you're not running, writing cookbooks and cooking, how do you spend your spare time?
Well, with all that, you don't have much time left. So like every morning for me, I train in the gym, I do an ice bath, I do my run, and I do that with my son. So again, my activity stacking is my son each morning comes to the gym with me. He's only 18 months old. He can't do anything. He doesn't understand what's going on, but I love the concept that he's there sharing something with me. And then that's where my time is spent. Outside of those things in business, it's like I love my time with my wife and my son. I'm incredibly lucky to have an amazing wife, and I just adore my son, and so that's what I do on my weekends.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
really appreciate you making time today.
No worries.
Now, everyone who wants to know more, Eat with Purpose is out in October, as we mentioned, available to pre-order by registering on Frank's Instagram, which we'll include in the show notes. But www.instagram.com/Frank Greeff_/.
Perfect. Now, just say Frank Greeff, GREEF.
Correct.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Thank you.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.